Hi guys. I'm at the football game for the University of Georgia, Notre Dame. I'm sorry that I haven't been able to get the video done over the past couple of days. If I need to give you an extension on your homework, just let me know. I have a lot of stuff to get taught, so let me go ahead and get started on that. And I might do this out of order, so it might be that that you have to go back and forth between the homeworks, but don't be afraid to do that. But I will get everything that I need to get taught. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is interval notation, and interval notation is really all about inequalities, and inequalities really are not hard. It's reading. And how do you read? You read from left to right. So when you read a graph, you also read a graph from left to right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all of the possible things that could happen when you're doing an interval. So, and let's do the notation. Let's look at the graph. And then let's do the interval notation. Alright, I'm just going to put in numbers, but it works for anything on the number line. So let's look at having like x greater than or equal to 2. When that looks on a graph, you probably remember from Algebra 1 or Algebra 2 that less than or equal to or greater than or equal to got a closed circle, and less than or greater than got an open circle. We're going to change that when we look at interval notation, and you'll see why it makes sense to do it on the graph this way. If we have a less than or equal to or a greater than or equal to, that's going to deal with brackets. And if we have less than or greater than, that's going to deal with parentheses. And I'm going to put also down here if you're dealing with infinity or negative infinity, you're going to use the parentheses. Okay, so let me go back to my graph. Don't make these graphs really hard because they're not. If I've got x greater than or equal to 2, since that's greater than or equal to, we would have a closed circle if we were doing the graph, and that would get shaded to the right. But the way that I want you to graph this now is that at 2, I want you to put a bracket, and I want you to shade to the right. Okay? So, how do I read that graph from left to right? It's got a starting point and it's got an ending point. Alright, this graph starts at 2, but it keeps going and going and going like Buzz Lightyear to infinity and beyond. So it's going to positive infinity, and you don't need to write the positive sign on My Math Lab. You can just put infinity. Now, looking at the 2, it's got a bracket on it. So it starts with 2 with a bracket. And since it's to infinity and beyond, you can never equal infinity. So infinity always gets a parenthesis. Okay? So that would be x greater than or equal to 2. It starts at 2 and it goes to infinity. Okay? So if I look at just a number, let's say x greater than 1. Okay? Here's my 1. It's going to the right because it's greater than, but since it's strictly greater than, no equal to sign, it's going to get a parenthesis. Okay? So, when I come over here to do interval notation, my interval notation is going to be 1 because that's where it starts, and it goes to infinity. Okay, the 1 has a parentheses on it, so we're going to put a parentheses, and you can never equal infinity, so it's going to have also a parentheses. Okay, let's do the less than. If I did less than or equal to 5, less than or equal to is to the left, but since it's less than or equal to, we're going to have a bracket. Okay? Now, thinking about this graph starting from left to right, this time I'm not going to start at 5, it actually ends at 5, and 5 would have a bracket. Okay, now numbers that are less than 5 are going to start to turn negative, and they're going to get really big negative. So over here, I would have negative infinity. So it actually starts at negative infinity, and infinity always gets a parentheses. Alright, just like if I had x less than negative 2. Alright, so if I have x less than negative 2, I'm going to shade left, and less than, since there's no equal to sign, is going to get a parentheses. Alright, so when I do my interval notation, it starts over here at negative infinity, and it goes to negative 2. Negative 2 has a parenthesis, and we know that the infinity also gets a parentheses. Now, those are the ones that are strictly greater than or strictly less than. Now, here's a couple that are between. Alright, these are kind of easy, because if I read the between, let's say I had negative 2 is less than x is less than or equal to 3. Alright, so see how the x is trapped between negative 2 and positive 3? So put negative 2 and positive 3 on your graph. Alright, it's trapped between, so we're going to shade between. Alright, now the negative 2 does not have an equal to sign, so it's going to get a parenthesis. And the 3 has an equal to sign, so it's going to get a bracket. So that makes the interval notation really easy. This graph starts at negative 2 and it stops at 3. So negative 2 gets a parentheses and 3 gets a bracket. Okay? Now, when you're looking at a couple of pieces, and we're going to deal with this when we get into absolute value. So I want to do one that's kind of 2 pieces. Alright? Let's say I had x less than 4 or x greater than 9. Okay, so when I go to my graph, it's less than 4, it's greater than 9. Alright, so the way that that's read when you do interval notation, starting from left to right, it starts at negative infinity and it goes to 4, infinity parentheses, 4 parentheses. Then we skip some space. So we're actually putting 2 pieces of a graph together, and the way we do that mathematically is the symbol union. Alright, then we pick up again at 9 and we go to infinity. So mathematicians are really lazy, and they like to write in lots of symbols. So they always come up with something that you're always reading left to right. And the interval notation, as you can see, is left to right. I'm going to make several videos so that they're easy to upload. But this is the one that is on interval notation. Thanks, guys.